Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome the PGA champion and two-time Masters champion, Scotty Scheffler, to the interview room. Scotty, welcome to Royal Portrush. How are preparations going for this week so far, and how much are you looking forward to the challenge of contending for the Open at Royal Portrush?
Yeah, it's going well. Got to play some holes yesterday. Golf course is good. It's in really good shape. Seems like a fun place to play. Played the back nine, got a few holes in on the front before we got delayed again. So overall, it was a good day, and yeah, getting used to the course.
Great stuff, Scotty. We'll go to the floor for questions. If you raise your hand, we'll get the mic to you. Just the far right here.
Hey, Scotty. The last two guys who were in here were talking about how they pay more attention to ball trajectory playing links golf. Is that something you agree with, that you're thinking about it more than you would playing Parkland? And then sort of as a follow-up, if there's anything else you can think of that you have to think about more in links golf than you would otherwise?
Well, yeah, not only the trajectory, but I think the amount of bounce you're going to play. I mean, like if you got a 150-yard shot into the wind, depending on where the pin is, I might hit 3 different clubs, just based upon wind direction, where the pin is, the type of shot I want to hit, if I need the ball to run, if I need the ball to stop, just little stuff like that. So I'd say trajectory is a huge component, especially in terms of how much the wind is going to affect your ball. Just because you can hit it low, but if you hit it low with spin, it's probably going to come up pretty far short. But then if you hit it low without the correct amount of spin, then it's going to go, a pretty good amount too far. And so I think not only trajectory, but spin control as well, I think is really important.
From a tactical angle, is there any part of you that likes having to think about more of this stuff, or is it kind of a pain, like you would prefer the other way where there's fewer elements to?
No, I wouldn't say that I'm a guy that, like, if I stepped over, let's just use the 150-yard shot as an example, into the wind, I'm not thinking about exactly how much spin I want on the ball. I just try to have a picture of what type of shot I'm trying to hit and then match the club to that. And so there's not a lot of thought that goes into it for me. It's more just getting a picture of what I think's correct and making sure it's not too far off with my caddy Ted, and then we kind of go from there and I try and hit the shot.
Okay, the next question is from Doug.
Kind of touched on this already, but in the 4 or 5 years you've been playing links golf, how does it fit your strengths, and do you feel like any weaknesses you have?
I think it fits my strengths because I like to do things very creatively, and I think out here you kind of have to. And I think each year we come over, I start learning a bit more and more. And so I guess one of the weaknesses would just be it's a little bit fresh. My first time coming over playing links golf was when I was a professional. I never came over and played as an amateur. So I feel like I'm learning more and more each time I come over here, and each golf course is very different too. Like Irish links, I would say so far is quite a bit different than Scottish links. It's a bit greener over here. You have to play a lot more shots into the air. Like this golf course has a few false fronts on the greens, which is, I would say, a bit unusual for links golf. A lot of times people talk about running it up, but it's quite difficult to run it up if there's a false front on the green, especially if you're playing into the wind. So here there's a lot of different shots you have to play, and it's an interesting golf course, and from what I've seen, it seems to be really fun to play and very fair. The pot bunkering here is also different than the other links courses that I've played, where in terms of these bunkers, I think it's going to be quite rare for you to see guys with 1 foot out of the bunker with their knee up on the side, where they're only I think some of the links courses that I've played, it was kind of hit or miss when you went to a bunker what kind of lie you're going to get there. Sometimes you were going to be putting the ball into the middle of the bunker just to have another shot, whereas there's a lot more slope in the bunkers to where the ball kind of funnels into the middle, and I would argue that might be a little bit more fair than 2 guys hitting a similar shot and one guy has to putt it back into the bunker and the other guy has a clean lie. And so I think I would prefer this type of bunkering just in terms of fairness. So that's another good thing about this golf course.
Okay, next question, microphone number 1, middle.
Scotty, you're once again favourite. Even though you haven't played that much links golf, what does that put extra pressure on you? And how close do you think you are solving the riddle of links golf? You were 7th last year, so you're clearly improving.
Yeah, I mean, I could not care any less about being the favorite or not being the favorite. We all start even par, and tournament starts on Thursday. That's pretty much all that matters. And in terms of links golf, I love the style of golf. I think it's a ton of fun. I think you have to be creative. You have to hit a lot of really good shots, and there's a challenge to it, but I think it's a lot of fun. And we'll see how the weather turns out this week. Weather has a pretty dramatic effect on how the golf course is going to play, and so you can play your practice rounds and prepare, but ultimately, I think when you step on the tee on Thursday, whatever the weather presents is going to be probably the strongest part of the test.
Okay, next question from microphone 3, just at the front.
Scotty, how would you define a successful year for you? And is that something you kind of write down before the year? Does that change year by year?
It doesn't really change year by year. I don't look at wins and losses or stuff like that. I don't sit down at the beginning of the year and say I want to win X number of times. I want to win this many majors. I want to win this many tour events. That's not something that I do. That's not something that works for me. I have some dreams and aspirations that I'm always striving towards. But at the end of the day, I try to stay present. I try to practice hard each and every day. And I feel like for me, when I start looking too far into the future, I think I'm a bit of a procrastinator. That's how I always was in school. And so if I wanted to look at my career and say I want to win, let's say 5 majors, I think sometimes when you're a human, you just have that invincibility where you're like, I'm just going to play professional golf my whole life. Like this stage is never going to end. But ultimately it's not, and I'm only going to be doing this for a finite amount of time. And so what works best for me is just to stay present, continue to put in the work, which I would argue is probably the most fun part for me. I love being able to practice, and that's what I enjoy doing, and just trying to get the most out of myself each day.
Okay, Mark in the front row.
Hey, Scotty, it seems to me that you care about as much about being ranked number 1 as you do about being a favorite here, which is not a lot. I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but there's a lot of guys that we've encountered over the years have been uncomfortable being at the top at number 1, and I'm curious, what about you do you feel like makes you feel so comfortable? Because outwardly it seems like you just kind of cruise along and nothing really phases you.
Well, yeah, I think the rankings are being number 1 in the world is a great accomplishment. I think as a golfer, I think as a professional to be ranked as the best in the world, I think is a huge career accomplishment. I don't think that it should be taken lightly, but you don't become number 1 in the world by thinking about rankings. You don't stay number 1 in the world thinking about rankings. Each tournament is its own challenge, and it's funny. It's like look at this week, for example. What's the best case scenario is I win this golf tournament, and then I'm going to show up in Memphis, and it's like, okay, listen, you won 2 majors this year. What are you going to do this week? That's the question you're going to get asked. And if I come in second this week, or if I finish dead last, it's no matter what happens, we're always on to the next week. And so that's one of the beautiful things about golf, and it's also one of the frustrating things because you can have such great accomplishments, but the show goes on, and that's just how it is. It's great to win tournaments. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes the feeling only lasts about 2 minutes, it seems like, when you're celebrating, and then it's like, okay, now you got to go do all this other stuff, and which is great, but sometimes the feeling of winning only lasts a few seconds, and it's pretty exciting and fun, but it just doesn't last that long.
Okay, microphone number 4, Alex.
Yeah, Scotty, the difference between creativity and conditions, a lot of times people use putters around the greens from distances, maybe even 20 or 30 yards out. But it sounds like you're saying that in this golf course, that probably is not going to be the case because it's greener and because of false fronts and things like that. How much do you like using a putter from distances?
Well, this golf course is greener, but that doesn't mean it's not firm. It's just the grass, I'd say, is slightly different. And, we're going to get some rain this week. But, I always found it interesting when I watched links golf, and I wondered why people were using so many different clubs. Because in the States, you just use a 60 because you need to get the ball to stop. In order to control the ball in the States, especially on the golf courses we play, you need spin to be able to stop the golf ball just because the greens are so fast. Here, it's a different challenge because it's the firmness which makes it challenging. And so trying to apply a lot of spin and hit these low, nipping wedge shots doesn't provide the same amount of control that it does in the States. Here, it almost seems like the quicker you get the ball on the ground rolling around the pin is the quicker the ball is going to be able to stop. But if you hit shots in the States with a lot of topspin, it's almost like the ball's never going to stop rolling. And so here, the challenge is judging that firmness to where you can just get the ball rolling around the pin. In terms of when you're playing in the States, you got to get the ball to stop at the pin. So it's just a bit of a different challenge. And so some shots it may be the putter, some shots it may be a 9-iron, some shots it might be a spinning shot. I think over here, a lot of the shots we play aren't dictated by grain as much. In the States, I think we get dictated a bit more with the grain that we see. And I'd say that would probably be the biggest difference.
Do you have a comfort level of a distance that you'd say at some point can't do that?
No, maybe like 70 yards. I really don't know. It could be far, it could be short. Sometimes I mean, the lie really does dictate a lot. I mean, there's golf courses over here are not nearly as manicured as the courses we play at home. I think this is a bit more of a natural setting where if you hit it into the stuff, you may get a great lie. You may be in a bush. I mean, you just don't really know when you hit it offline, and that's why you got to try to keep the ball in the fairway. And that also can be a big part of the shots you play around the greens. Like if I'm sitting in heavy grass, I'm going to have to play more of a 60-degree type bunker shot because you need the speed of the club to pop the ball out of that heavy grass. But if you're in, kind of a wispier lie and it's thinner, then I'm going to try and, like I said, get the ball running around the cup somehow.
Okay, microphone number 1 in the back row.
Scotty, you have a pretty, I guess in your profession, you have a pretty variable work schedule. I'm wondering how obsessed you are with sleep, and a week like, the last couple of weeks where you're changing time zones a lot. Do you have any jet lag tricks?
I wish I had some better jet lag tricks. I think you probably have to ask some of the guys that do a bit more international travel than I do. For me, I just kind of try to ride it out. I try to stay awake the first day I get in and then go to sleep, but I typically don't sleep great that night. And then like my wife will come in, she'll take a nap, she'll do basically whatever she wants, and then she'll sleep great all the way through the night. So, I mean, I don't have a good answer. Just ride it out.
Okay, to the far right, Swami.
Scotty, I mean, you seem a lot calm and composed, always. I mean, rarely do we see any flashes, should I say, of frustration. Have you always been like that? And you always seem to be in contention, whether you're 5 or 7 behind. We can't call you fiery. What would you call Scotty Scheffler? And have you evolved into that?
I would say that I still get very frustrated. I think at times I'm better at masking it. I don't think, I think at times this year I may have gotten overly frustrated. I think it's just part of the game. I think part of the game is controlling your emotions, is controlling your mind, and I've definitely gotten better at that over the years. I'd get a bit headless at times when I was growing up, especially when I was young, and I even see it in my son now. He's 14 months, and I'm like, this poor kid's got my personality. It's tough. I had a high level of frustration growing up, and I still do today. I think at times I'm just better at masking it and controlling it and using it more of a strength to kind of help me focus versus trying to just, I think when I was young, I would either hold it in or kind of blow up. And now I think I do a better job of holding it in, but also getting over the next shot and almost sharpening my focus to where I'm in a better spot after a bit of frustration than I am before, if that makes sense. I have no idea. Maybe if you see my wife this week, you can ask her.
Joy, just at the far right again.
Scotty, you're the world number 1. When do we see you in other parts of the world? Why are you, hesitant to travel to, say, Asia? And don't you consider it as part of your responsibility being the world number 1?
I think the greatest competition we have right now in the game of golf is the PGA Tour and playing in the States. And so I'm playing where the best competition is. And week in, week out, I believe that's the PGA Tour. And for me to play against the best players in the world, that's where all of them are. And would it be nice to play an international schedule? Yeah, I'd love to be able to travel the world and play golf. But, there's a time and a place for that. And right now, with the way my life is, it's not really the time or the place. I'm starting a young family and, traveling across the world to play golf would be great, but that's, at the end of the day, that's not my priority or my responsibility. And my responsibility is my family first, and that's where my priorities lie. I'm blessed that my wife is able to come out and travel and support me for the moment, but eventually that'll stop, and maybe then we'll play more of an international schedule. Or right now, I'm just kind of chasing the competition. Right now, I believe that's on the PGA Tour, and that's where my priorities are.
Okay, Riath in the front row.
Scotty, Rory was speaking in the last week about the art and science of golf. He sees himself as more of an artist. Where would you put yourself? Are you more scientist or artist?
I would say when it comes to playing, I'm definitely more of an artist, but I like to joke with my coach at home that I'm trying to be a robot. No, I mean, I like to use the technology that we have to continue to get better, but at the end of the day, when you're practicing to go out and play. You're not practicing when you're playing, if that makes sense. I have ways that I practice to try to get better, but when it comes to playing the golf tournament, we're playing the golf tournament. I'm not playing golf swing. I'm not playing games like I do on the TrackMan at home. I'm playing a round of golf, trying to shoot the lowest score possible. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I'm focused on, is playing the game that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Just another one on links golf, and when we talk about the kind of wisdom and nous and all of those other terms of links golf, is there anyone in the game, current player or former player, who you've actually gone to try and pick up a few of the secrets of this format?
Yeah, I like to ask guys questions. I feel like I can learn a lot from the players out here. You know, there's a lot of talent on tour, and I feel like we can always be learning. And so I like to ask guys questions. Sometimes I try not to make it too obvious whether or not I think they're going to give me an answer or not. But I like to ask questions. I like to learn from guys. I learn a lot by watching too. And so, like for instance, playing with Bob last week at the Scottish Open, I got to learn a lot. You know, playing with Adam Scott as well. You know, he's had a great career out here, and you know, I feel like I can learn a lot from him. And you know, there's a time and a place to compete, but at the end of the day, you know, we're spending 5.5 hours out there, and sometimes, you know, we can have a little bit of time to chat. And you know, I had some good chats with Bob last week about links golf, and you know, I felt like I learned a little bit from him as well.
Could you give an example?
Not going to share any trade secrets.
Okay, John, on the far right.
Scotty, slight change of pace. How much do you read? Do you have a book on the go that you keep by your bedside? And is it by any chance a golf book, or indeed don't you read at all?
You asked me about books?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a devotional book that I read on my iPad. I have another book that I'm reading right now. It's definitely not a golf book. It's another spiritual book, and you know, basically that. My Bible's pretty much it. I'm not really a huge reader. I have read a couple books about golf course design, or sorry, I shouldn't say read. Skimmed would probably be a better description of that. Just to learn, just out of curiosity. When you know, I did that a little bit before Bennett when I had a little bit more downtime. Now there's not nearly as much downtime when I get home. It's kind of a sprinting around chasing the little man, so I don't get too much time to read. But yeah, basically just, you know, Bible, a couple other books, nothing about golf.
Okay, we'll take the final 3 questions in the room. Start with microphone number 1.
Scotty, just wondering what differences or unique challenges there is to putting on links golf as opposed to, you know, back over in America.
Well, I think getting adjusted to speed is always kind of the most important over here. It's a little bit of a slower green speed, and that's just based on necessity because you get much more, the elements are much more of a factor. And so the green speeds can't get that fast because we could get one day with wind and all of a sudden the golf course becomes unplayable. And so getting used to the speed, I'd say, is the most important. Outside of that, I think, you know, putting is putting, and golf's still golf no matter where you're playing. You know, growing up in the States, I feel like we're used to playing a lot of different styles of golf, and especially when you're young, you grow up on so many different golf courses, and you know, when you get to the PGA Tour, everything's so perfectly manicured. But when you're growing up in Texas, like, we were not playing the best golf courses week in, week out. You know, we're playing everyday golf courses that everyday golfers play, and you learn to play on a lot of different conditions. Whether if it's summertime, you're playing on hard pan where there's cracks in the earth, and playing in cold weather, warm weather. I think, you know, growing up in Texas, you see a lot of different stuff.
Okay, a question on the far right.
Scotty, what is your earliest memory of this Open?
The Open Championship? I mean, I always liked being able to wake up early in the mornings and turn on the TV, you know, before my parents would get up. You know, my dad probably wouldn't. I know my dad doesn't really like us watching TV first thing in the morning, but if I open week at home, you know, if I was up early, I would for sure just sneak downstairs and turn on the TV, and I think that would be one thing he'd let me watch because he was interested in it as well. But, you know, if I was 10, 12 years old, going downstairs and turning on, I don't know, cartoons or whatever I would watch back then, it'd probably make me turn it off. But the Open Championship was something that we could probably both watch together, and, you know, he was an early riser as well. So that was always just really nice, just relaxing time, getting to watch the Open and just being curious, and just hoping one day I could make it over and play.
And it was announced last week that Live Golf's going to reapply for world ranking points. Do you think that having them included, their tournaments included, would be a better representation of the top players in the world?
Yeah, I think having the ability to rank all the golfers in the world is really important. I think when you have guys always playing a different schedule, it can be very hard to rank player versus player. That was always difficult for us, I would say, in amateur golf, because you have so many different tournaments and guys aren't playing against each other every week, that it's really hard to rank, you know, a guy that plays, you know, junior golf on the West Coast versus a guy that plays junior golf on the East Coast. You know, they may only play together 2 or 3 times a year. It can be very difficult to rank who is the best player when it's like that. And so in terms of the world ranking points. I think the more often we can get the best players in the world playing together, I think the better, and that'll only be better for the rankings as well.
Okay, we'll finish with Doug.
What would be your definition of a slump? And when do you think is the last time you were in one?
I'll just let you guys define my slumps. Just let you guys figure that out. That's not up to me.
We're not that smart.
Neither am I.
When you talk about the show goes on, which it does. What would be the longest you've ever celebrated something, and what was the most crushing loss or the time it took to get over one?
I think it's kind of funny. I think, I think I said something after the Byron this year about like, it feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for like a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes, that kind of euphoric feeling. And like to win the Byron Nelson Championship at home, I literally worked my entire life to become good at golf, to have an opportunity to win that tournament. And you win it, you celebrate, get to hug my family, my sister's there. It's such an amazing moment. And then it's like, okay, now what are we going to eat for dinner? Life goes on. Is it great to be able to win tournaments and to accomplish the things I have in the game of golf? Yeah. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes just to think about, because it's literally worked my entire life to become good at this sport, and to have that kind of sense of accomplishment, I think is a pretty cool feeling. To get to live out your dreams is very special. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not out here to inspire the next generation of golfers. I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? This is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, places of your heart. There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number one in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? And I really do believe that, because what is the point? You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know. Because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week, and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, So we really do. We work so hard for such little moments. And, I'm kind of a sicko. I love putting in the work. I love being able to practice. I love getting out to live out my dreams. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point. Because I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but am I not? It's just one of those deals. I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life. But does it fill the deepest wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not. I love playing golf. I love being able to compete. I love living out my dreams. I love being a father. I love being able to take care of my son. I love being able to provide for my family out here playing golf. And, every day when I wake up early to go put in the work, my wife thanks me for going out and working so hard. And when I get home, I try and thank her every day for taking care of our son. It's just, that's why I talk about families being my priority, because it really is. I'm blessed to be able to come out here and play golf, but if my golf ever started affecting my home life, or it ever affected the relationship I have with my wife or with my son, that's going to be the last day that I play out here for a living. This is not the be-all, end-all. This is not the most important thing in my life. And that's why I wrestle with, why is this so important to me? Because, I would much rather be a great father than I would be a great golfer. That at the end of the day, that's what's more important to me.
But I think that's why I asked the question the way I did. What is losing like for you?
It sucks. I hate it. I really do.
But that's part of the competition.
That is, and I think that's why we try to work so hard to not lose. But golf's a game where you just lose a lot more often than you win. That's just a simple part of it. In basketball or football, when there's only 2 guys out there, you can win a lot more than you lose. But I think I was looking at stats. It was one of the best tennis players. It might have been Federer or Djokovic or somebody. They only won like 48% of their points or something like that. Playing professional sports is a really weird thing to do. Like, it really is, just because we put in so much effort. We work so hard for something that's so fleeting. It really is. Like, the feeling of winning just doesn't last that long. When I sit back at the end of the year, and I kind of try to reflect on things, like having that sense of accomplishment from winning the Masters tournament, from winning the PGA Championship. I have a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for it, but it's just hard to explain how it just doesn't satisfy, is how I would describe it. It's an unsatisfying venture. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is this is not the place to look for your satisfaction. This is something that's where you can have a great appreciation for and a great amount of thankfulness for being able to do this. And like I said, it's literally one of the most fun things that I can do in my entire life. I love being able to come out here and play golf and compete, but at the end of the day, it's just not what satisfies me.